Namaskar and welcome back to Media Scan, your weekend dose of headlines, controversies and perspectives. The festival season is at its peak and people are enjoying them with full fervor. However, the challenge of COVID is not completely over and it is advisable to maintain the relevant protocols. The economy is showing an uptick, but on the other hand, we continue to face the challenge of climate change, on which Prime Minister Narendra Modi made everybody sit up and take notice at the Glasgow conference. We will discuss that in detail, but first, what made news? When Prime Minister Modi met the ambitious target of reaching net zero emissions by 2070, it made the whole world sit up and take notice. It was a surprise, and not just to his supporters, even his detractors. PM Modi has also pledged that by 2030, India will ensure that 50% energy comes from renewable sources. All this has sparked off a debate worldwide, including some of the most powerful nations of the world. PM Modi also made it very clear that developing nations must not be made to pay the price for those who are the biggest pollutants and have been so in the past. However, he also stressed that India is ready to walk the extra mile to ensure a clean and safe world for our children. We are going to discuss this all in much more detail with our special panel of experts in just a few moments. The results of the recent by-polls gave out a mixed tally, thus not giving any clear indications of what they mean in a pan-India scenario. The ruling BJP, Congress and JDU strengthened their respective positions in Assam, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan and Bihar. But the BJP suffered some losses in Himachal Pradesh at the hands of the Congress. At the same time, the party has made interesting inroads in Telangana. The glory of the holy Kedarnath shrine and the surroundings is now being restored at a fast pace after the devastating earthquake which almost shook the entire area. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, keeping up his old pledge, inaugurated a massive statue of Adi Shankaracharya at the site close to the temple. At the same time, he also launched several development and infrastructure related projects to give the much needed boost to religious tourism or the potential of the holy shrine. A massive political outrage was sparked off after the Samajwadi Party chief Akhilesh Yadav, during a public function, equated the contribution of Muhammad Ali Jinnah with the likes of Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel and Jawaharlal Nehru. The BJP hit back, saying this exposed the real nature of the Samajwadi Party's politics. SP spokespersons tried to defend the statement of their leader, but found themselves on a weak wicket. First, the Calcutta High Court imposed a complete cracker ban, not even allowing for the green types. Then, the Supreme Court overturned the order, saying there was no blanket ban, but restrictions are to be followed. All this led to netizens fighting it out in the internet and the digital arena, those who supported the ban and those who didn't. While people shared pictures of bursting crackers in defiance of the restrictions, saying this was an unnecessary interference into their festival, there were many others who cautioned because they pointed at the worsening air quality. We have certainly not seen the end of the fight. When Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke at the Conference of Parties in Glasgow for the climate change purpose, he made the whole world sit up and take notice. So what did Prime Minister Modi really say? He pledged that India will cut its carbon dioxide emissions to net zero by the year 2070. Not just that, he pledged that half of our emissions will be cut, that is 50%, latest by the year 2030, which as a corollary we can say that we will be resourcing 50% of our energy from renewable sources. At the same time, the Prime Minister did not forget to add that the burden of paying for climate damage, for all the hazards that the world is facing, which has now reached emergency proportions, cannot be laid completely on poor developing nations and they be made to pay the price for the sins and the faults of the bigger, the larger, powerful, developed nations. Hence, the burden must be shared, and those who are the real pollutants will have to take the real responsibility. At the same time, like a responsible global leader, Prime Minister Modi stressed that nevertheless, India will walk the extra mile in ensuring that we reach our proper targets. He worked on several other issues with various global leaders, world leaders, and domain experts on the subject of renewables, particularly solar energy. So, what are these pledges that PM Modi has made? What do they mean for India particularly and the world at large? Also, how will we achieve these ambitious, this very lofty goals? To understand all these complicated and very sensitive issues, I have a special panel of guests here with me. So let me introduce my guests to you so we are able to understand the subject better with their help. My first guest for the evening is senior journalist, a journalist of long-standing repute in the writing on environment and related issues. We have been reading him for years, actually decades. Vishwa Mohan, editor, environment and related subjects of the Times of India. Welcome Vishwa Mohan ji, straight from Glasgow, where you are following the developments at the COP.
Thank you, Smita. Thank you.
I also have here with me Shikha Bhasin, a domain expert. She is associated with the Center for Environment, Energy and Water, an organization working relentlessly in this field and also sharing in policy making with the government to achieve these lofty goals of saving the climate and other related issues. Welcome Shikha Bhasin, also joining us from Glasgow.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So with a senior journalist on environment issues and a domain expert with us, I hope we are going to have a proper rounded 360-degree discussion on the subject here of the climate conference. Vishwa Mohan ji, I would like to come to you first here, sir. You heard the Prime Minister speaking at the COP and the lofty goals he has set out for the world. As a senior journalist and an observer on these matters, how was this declaration of Prime Minister Modi taken by senior journalists and observers like you and other people present at the conference? And what was the initial reactions when this address was made by the Prime Minister?
Smita, I would like to say whatever Prime Minister promised here, I won't say lofty, it's realistic. It's realistic goal, a very significant goal. And with all these 5 goal which he placed before the world leaders, I think it will change the entire course, entire narratives as far as India, as far as developing countries are concerned. As you notice that the entire attention went to placing about the net zero, the 2070. But the more significant is what the Prime Minister has promised for the next 10 years, like till 2030. So that's very important. Why this is very important? Because India has not only promised that it will become carbon neutral by 2070, but it has also shown a step. It has also shown the world how it will reach there. And for this, it is important what India will do in the next 9 years, 10 years by 2030. So if you look at other 4 pledges which he made here, one is about, he said that the non-fossil fuel, the share of non-fossil fuel would be the 500 gigawatt by 2030. It is important because Prime Minister has earlier said that, and he said that the 500 gigawatt would be by 2030. And he said this is be non-fossil fuel. So when he says non-fossil fuel, it's not only the renewable energy. Obviously, the nuclear power also play an important part in it. So the non-fossil fuel means all the renewable energy plus the nuclear power. And the second, he said that that's slightly lost in translation that day. He said that 50% of, basically it should be the 50% of the electricity mix would be that non-fossil fuel. And that is very important. Because earlier the India has submitted this NDC and it said it should be 40%. Now it is increased to 50%.
So we
Thirdly,
saw those goals, and of course you are explaining to them much better to us, making it simpler for the sake of our viewers. But Vishnu Mohan ji, a very quick query here, sir. My question is, when Prime Minister Modi made these declarations and you know, sort of charted out the roadmap of achieving these aims, which you are saying are quite realistic. So how did the world community take it in your observation, since you were there?
Basically, as far as the India's earlier stand was that India is not going to upgrade its NDC, and it is not going to say that India will achieve net zero by 2050. But India always kept this option open because this is not just about the pledging. You have to do something to achieve it. And that's why I'm saying this is very realistic. And that's why India said it's 2070. Though there was certain disappointment in certain quarters. Why did India did not promise about the 2050 net zero? But India has very strong ground not to pledge the 2050 net zero.
So you are saying as you notice that about that 2050 net zero goal, if Prime Minister Modi did not stick to it but gave his own timeline, it was because the situation is such. Is that so?
Yes, certainly. Because look, China is emitting much more than India. So there was no point India would come to 2050. Had all the historical polluters, I would say the developed countries,
so I think that is very well put,
Vishnu Mohan ji. Much higher than India.
Allow me, sir, to come to Shikha also here. I am sure she has her own observations of the whole issue, and then I'll come back to you on the China factor, as well as about the responsibility of other countries and how do, you know, that entire debate about the bigger pollutants versus others. Shikha Bhasin, let me come to you here now. As you just heard Vishnu Mohan tell us that the Prime Minister's goals are realistic. He may not have stuck to the 2015 target, but that is because he knows where we stand. However, about this whole issue about non-fossil fuels and the fossil fuels, and the fact that India's dependence on coal is a cause of worry, and I lately saw a lot of, you know, commentaries being written about India just speaking a lot, you know, people raising a lot of doubts and speculation on this, putting it on the coal factor. So put all together, how do you look at the Prime Minister's speech from the, you know, standpoint of a person working in the field, a domain expert? And how do you think is the best way we can go about it?
I think for all of us, when Prime Minister Modi actually announced a net zero target for 2070 and backed it up with very, very clear ambitions in the short term, right? So not only did India put forward a very clear target for 2070, but we also front-loaded our ambition and our leadership in showing that, you know, here are 5 other things or 4 other things that we will make sure that we achieve in the short to medium term. And I think that in and of itself is a great reason for celebration, you know, and a reason for all of us to feel very proud of, you know, India, of our government. And in effect, we have contributed to the goals that the Paris Agreement has finally looking achievable. It is India's targets, along with all the other targets that were mentioned on the first day of COP26 in Glasgow, that have finally suggested that the world is actually perhaps going to be able to reach and curtail climate change to less than 2 degrees.
Allow me to interrupt you here very briefly, Shikha. Very briefly, allow me to interrupt you here. You talked of the world community. You have explained your you know, take, your perspective on the Prime Minister's goals very clearly. But did the other people like you working there, who are, you know, active in the field and working on the subject for a long time, did they also look at it in a similar way?
Yes. So I think there's 1/4 of people who are not 100% certain, right, what it means when we say that the world needs to reach to net zero by 2050. So that goal is for the world. It does not mean that every single country needs to get there by 2050.
Correct.
What it means is that historical emitters need to get there much faster, so that on average, even if India is getting there by 2070, on average, the world is still able to get there by 2050. But this nuancing or this explanation ambition is not as clear to a lot of people, which is why we saw some media reports saying that this is not ambitious enough from Prime Minister Modi. India should have stuck to 2050, but I don't think that is at all realistic or correct on part of the global community to expect from India. This is the target
Shikha,
that we've set
just
out.
a quick query here before we go ahead on this topic. You know these people better. You have been coordinating and working with them. It's your area of work. There is an effort, and I think it applies to various other countries, but most particularly to India here. There is an effort on the part of the activists working in the field of climate and environment. They are mostly looked upon as left-leaning people. And there is always an effort to paint our Prime Minister in a demonic way, in a manner in which, they are as if at loggerheads, the climate activists, and it's become all a political, very, very a political debate going beyond climate change. Keeping that in the backdrop, what do you think the climate activists and people working in the field felt when Prime Minister Modi gave out his address? And what is the buzz over the speech? If you can tell us a bit about it.
There's two aspects to it. One is there are environmental activists out there, whose lives and livelihoods are dedicated to looking at sustainability. But we have to understand that a government does not make decisions only in the name of environment. It does look at economic concerns. It has to look at a multitude of development priorities that the country has. And I think with this announcement, actually, there is such a unique opportunity now for India to really plan its development in a manner that is sustainable, to really think about technologies and the sorts of jobs and the kinds of industry that can get a fillip, to what we've committed to achieving.
I'll come back to you on that, okay? Because that's a larger question we have to address, and all governments have to do it. But allow me to bring in Vishnu Mohan here quickly. Vishnu Mohan, you just heard Shikha explain to us that, governments have to look at the economic aspects of fighting climate change. It's about jobs, it's about sustainability. But coming back to the issue of politics, sir, this whole debate about left governments versus right governments and governments which care for climate and X and Y who do not care. I mean, this COP, the Prime Minister's address, has made it very clear that political, divides do not matter when it comes to the life and livelihood of people, the future of our children, the future of this whole planet. How do you see it, sir?
Smita, I would tell you that anyone would be surprised to know that it's not about left, right, center. It's about global south versus global north. And India represents global south, and the Prime Minister led the global south. Here, not a left, right, center. And I met whole lot of people, entire spectrum of people. Nobody criticized what India has promised now, because everybody was so, in fact, nobody expected India to go for the net zero. Still, India announced 2070 net zero. And whatever it said about the 2030 goals is very significant. And one very significant point which I would like to mention here, which got lost in the net zero debate, India has, for the first time, the Prime Minister has that day announced that India will also reduce its emission, 1 billion tons of emissions by 2030. And this has happened for the first time when India has promised to reduce its emission in absolute terms. So this is very significant. Nobody noticed it, but I think even Shikha would explain that's fantastic, and that will take India to a next level when eventually India will peak its emission and ultimately be a carbon neutral nation.
So
nobody criticized it. In fact, nobody.
At that juncture, actually I have very little time left, so I may not be able to take up all those aspects that you have mentioned, in one by one. How I would like to ask you is, to make it easier for the benefit of our viewers, how do we go from here now? We have set a target, lofty, ambitious, realistic, unrealistic, whatever. The Prime Minister has given a roadmap. He has given a message to the industry, to governments, to our neighborhood, and to the strong powers of the world at the same time. So now how do we go about it, ensuring that the future of our children is they get to inherit an earth which is better than what it is today, certainly not worse, and we save the planet?
I strongly believe that India would certainly achieve its goal, whatever it promised. Because if you look at the 2015 goal, India is among the only big emerging economy who is on track to achieve its goal. So
Yes.
if somebody asks me whether India would be able to do it or not, India will certainly do it. And with the help of the renewable energy push and the efforts are being taken for energy transition, India would be able to do it. And you might have noticed that besides what Prime Minister announced on 1st of November, the very next day, he with Mr. Boris Johnson launched that One Solar, One World, One Grid initiative.
Correct. I was
that's the
coming to that,
initiative.
sir.
That's the India initiative. So, and when India would do it, half of the problem of the world will be solved. And India is doing it, and India is leading from the front. And that grid is a fantastic opportunity for the world to invest in India. So, as far as the business and economics aspect of it concerned, it's all linked with each other. Obviously, when investment comes, energy transition will happen in a manner that the jobs people do not get lose their jobs, and also the new job opportunities will be created in the renewable energy field. So
Perfect.
India will
I'll
definitely
get a
do
take
it.
from
India
Shikha
has been
also
on
here,
track
sir.
to-
Shikha, you just heard Vishnu Mohanji express his concerns. While he knows that these goals are completely doable, he's saying that we have to do them in such a way that people do not, they do not lose their livelihoods. The economic security is not threatened, particularly for an emerging economy like India. So this entire concern about India making its place in the arena of nations, in the global platform, as a rising economic power, but at the same time, the concerns the Prime Minister has laid, the emergency of climate damage that we are suffering, the outlook of other countries towards India, where do you see a meeting point, a balancing road ahead, so that our people's prosperity, their growth, their economic security is not threatened, and yet we do what we have set out to do?
Yeah, so I think I would actually flip flip what you've asked and sort of make it much more to do with how this presents perhaps the most ambitious opportunity for economic development for India.
You mean in terms of industry for renewable resources?
Absolutely.
I mean, is that what you're saying?
Yes, absolutely. Whether it is industry, that is already working in renewable energy, whether it is
Yes.
newer technologies such as green hydrogen, whether it is energy efficiency gains that, we will continue to make in our other industrial sectors, there is the potential for such immense growth and for India to get to these targets, which of course we will, because we've never reneged on an international commitment and we recognize the criticality of what's ahead of us. We will require a lot of financing, a lot of technology partnerships to come to be. We'll also require some amount of, dedicated institutional reform within the country. One of my colleagues, Dr. Arunabha Ghosh, he has suggested the constitution of a national commission on climate change to make sure that interministerial coordination, climate change as a as an economic opportunity, but also as an area of strategic risk is mandated and sort of looked at very strategically. So I think if we look at the economic costing, the net zero is going to cost us a lot of money to get there. It is going to be upwards of at least $9,400 billion. These are numbers that have again been put forward by my colleagues at the Council on Energy, Environment and Water. We know that there is opportunity for renewable energy. We know that there is immense opportunity for newer technologies, whether that is in the space of green hydrogen for industrial decarbonization, whether that's in the space of electric mobility and other transport solutions. I think we have just embarked on our most ambitious development path. And I do think that we need to look at this as a very unique opportunity for India to really show the world what sustainable development can look like.
Perfect. I think that's a great and a very hopeful juncture at which you are leaving this discussion, Shikha. But I'm afraid I'll have to stop you here. I would have loved to carry this on for a little more to understand a few more aspects of the subject. But I've completely run out of time. So viewers, from what Shikha Bhasin just explained to us and Vishwa Mohan told us earlier, two things are very clear from listening to both our experts here. That number one, the goals, the ideals, the targets set out by Prime Minister Modi are completely doable. They are realistic. We need to get down to work. At the same time, while the ambitious goal of net zero emissions has its economic costs, there are issues of environment, there are issues of development and growth and employment involved. As Shikha said, it also brings new economic opportunities for a country like ours. We just need to put our heads together and work out the economics of it. And as she said, we need to build institutions which will help our population to get to that goal. Because finally, as both our experts have outlined here in our discussion and is being said again and again, finally, nothing is costlier than the future of our children and the existence of our planet. So let me thank both our guests here who have joined us from Glasgow, and they were very kind to find the time in the middle of the conference that they have been so keenly following. Thank you very much, Vishwa Mohan, for connecting to us on Mediascan, and I hope we will get to listen to you more on the future weekend, sir.
Thank you.
And thank you, Shikha Bhasin, for explaining these complicated subjects so simply and so well to all of us. Thank you for connecting from Glasgow.
Thank you very much.
On that hopeful note, viewers, I'm afraid I have to wrap up for this evening. So do keep watching DD India as we continue to scan the media for you. Good night.